Some coaches had every tool, every recruit, and every break, and still found a way to blow it. Picture this: five-star recruits signing on the dotted line, packed stadiums going absolutely insane, boosters writing blank checks, and then complete and utter collapse. These are the coaches who were handed golden tickets and turned them into paperweights. What separates a legend from a wasted opportunity in college football? Stick around because we're about to find out. Look, we're not talking about bad coaches here. Bad coaches never get the chance to waste opportunities in the first place. We're talking about opportunity wasters, guys who had talent, money, timing, and every advantage you could possibly want, and still turned it into mediocrity. You'll recognize every single one of these coaches. You probably still argue some of them deserve another shot or that my opinion is too harsh. But here's the thing: opportunity doesn't knock twice in college football. It recruits elsewhere. So let's start with the man who turned one of the most exciting programs in the country into a decade-long rebuild. Kevin Sumlin, from Johnny Football to no direction. Kevin Sumlin seemed unfocused. He inherited a roster built for instant SEC success and somehow made it boring. He had Johnny Manziel. He beat Alabama in 2012. He set impossible expectations overnight and then just stopped evolving. Think about this for a second. You have the most electric player in college football. You just beat the defending national champions. The entire college football world is watching. And what do? You get conservative. Sumlin had everything handed to him on a silver platter. A Heisman winner. A fan base that was ready to build statues. Boosters throwing money around like confetti. But he couldn't figure out how to manage egos or develop a consistent system. Here's your receipt. 2014 A&M starts 5-0 and ranked number 6 in the country. Then they get absolutely humiliated 3 weeks straight, outscored 142-51. That's not bad luck, that's bad coaching. But here's what really drives everyone nuts about Sumlin. He had Myles Garrett, he had Ryan Swope, he had Luke Joeckel, NFL talent everywhere you looked. And somehow, his teams always felt like they were playing scared. But if Sumlin could manage locker room egos, then why did every season end the same way? Late season collapses, players giving up, zero discipline. Verdict: winning early can be the worst thing that ever happens to a coach. Willie Taggart, the one-year rebuild that never happened. Willie Taggart was delusional. He took over a top 10 talent roster and delivered penalties and dysfunction. He talked about culture. He talked about energy. He delivered 21 games of pure chaos before getting fired and leaving FSU $18 million poorer. Let's be real here. Florida State wasn't some typical rebuilding project when Taggart took over. This was a program that had been to the playoffs before falling down a peg under Jimbo before he left. They had Cam Akers, they had Tamorrion Terry, they had defensive talent that other programs would kill for. But Taggart came in acting like he was taking over some FCS program. We gotta change the culture. We gotta bring energy. Dude, the culture was fine. The energy was fine. What wasn't fine was your offensive system that looked like it was designed on a napkin. Here's your receipt. The 2018 opener versus Virginia Tech. This was supposed to be the rebirth of Florida State football. It ended 24-3 with fans booing by halftime. And it wasn't just that they lost. It's how they lost. Penalties everywhere. Players looking confused. Basic assignments getting blown. This was supposed to be the guy who was going to bring Florida State back to prominence? The worst part? Taggart kept talking about how they needed time. Time for what? You inherited Jimbo Fisher's recruits. You had more talent than 90% of college football. What you needed wasn't time. It was competence. But if Taggart understood modern football, then why did his offense look like it was designed in 1995? Why were players constantly confused about basic assignments? Verdict: you can't culture your way out of bad scheming. Dan Mullen, the genius who outsmarted himself. Dan Mullen was arrogant. He was an offensive mastermind who brought Florida back into SEC contention and then ego-tripped his way out of town. He turned Kyle Trask into a Heisman finalist. He had the SEC East locked down. He pushed Alabama to the brink in the 2020 SEC title game. Now here's the thing about Mullen that made him so frustrating. The guy could actually coach. Like, really coach. He took Kyle Trask, a guy who was barely recruited, and turned him into one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But Mullen had this fatal flaw. He thought he was smarter than everyone else. He thought he could out-scheme his way out of any problem. Recruiting? That's for other coaches. Elite assistants? He didn't need them. Building relationships with high school coaches? Waste of time. Here's your receipt. 1 year after that Alabama game, Florida loses to Missouri, fires half the staff, and finishes 6-7. That's not rebuilding. That's imploding. And the Missouri loss? That wasn't just any loss. That was Florida getting outplayed, outcoached, and outhustled by a team that had no business being on the same field with them. That's when you knew Mullen had completely lost the locker room. The sideline chaos became legendary. Players arguing with coaches, coaches arguing with each other, Mullen standing there looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. This was supposed to be the guy who was going to bring Florida back to championship level, but if Mullen was such a brilliant play caller, then why couldn't he recruit? Why did he refuse to hire elite assistants? Why did sideline chaos become his trademark? Verdict: being a brilliant play caller doesn't make you a program builder. Clay Helton, the face of USC's lost decade. Clay Helton was complacent. He took over at a blue blood that practically recruits itself and still couldn't develop talent consistently. He won the 2017 Rose Bowl. It looked like a revival. It turned out to be the peak. For 6 years, he coached some of the most talented rosters in college football and never sniffed the playoff. Let's talk about what USC should be. They're in Los Angeles. They have unlimited resources. They have a pipeline to the NFL that most programs can only dream about. They have tradition. They have facilities. They have everything you need to compete at the highest level. And somehow, Clay Helton made all of that feel ordinary. Here's your receipt. Helton coached 5 future or potential future NFL quarterbacks at USC. Sam Darnold, JT Daniels, Keaton Slovis, Jackson Dart, and Miller Moss. And yet, USC never had a consistent elite offense under him. Think about that for a second. You have 5 NFL caliber quarterbacks over 6 years, and you can't put together one elite season? That's not bad luck. That's not injuries. That's coaching. But here's what really made Helton frustrating to watch. USC would have all this talent, and they'd play like they were afraid of their own shadow. No killer instinct, no program identity, just existing. The 2017 Rose Bowl was supposed to be the turning point. They beat Penn State in an absolute classic. Sam Darnold looked like a superstar. The future looked bright. And then nothing. Just years of mediocrity with flashes of what could have been. But if USC has all that Hollywood talent, then why did they play like they were scared of their own shadow? Why couldn't they establish any kind of program identity? Verdict: culture kills even the flashiest programs. Mario Cristobal, the elite recruiter who lacks in game skills. Mario Cristobal is stubborn. He is a recruiting wizard who has brought in blue-chip dominance to 2 major programs, but insists on playing 1990s football in a 2020s sport. He can recruit, he can build programs, he cannot call plays when it matters. He's famous for micromanaging and clock management disasters that make you want to throw your remote. Here's the thing about Cristobal that drives everyone absolutely insane. The guy can recruit like nobody's business. He goes into living rooms and convinces 5-star players to come play for him. He builds elite offensive lines, he gets the talent, and then game day comes, and it's like he forgets what year it is. Conservative play calling. Clock management that makes you question everything. 4th down decisions that make no sense. It's like watching someone build a Ferrari and then drive it 35 miles per hour in the fast lane. Here's your receipt. 2023 versus Georgia Tech. Miami is up late. All Cristobal has to do is kneel out the clock. Instead, he calls a handoff. Fumble. Lost. One of the most baffling collapses in college football history. But that Georgia Tech game wasn't an anomaly. That was just the most obvious example of what Cristobal does. He gets conservative when he should be aggressive, then aggressive when the situation calls for a conservative play call. He overthinks when he should trust his players. He manages the clock like he's trying to run out the entire 4th quarter with 12 minutes left. At Oregon, it was the same thing. Elite recruiting classes, NFL talent everywhere, and then games that felt like watching paint dry until something went horribly wrong. But if Cristobal can out-recruit everyone, then why do his teams always play not to lose? Why does every big game feel like watching paint dry until something goes horribly wrong? Verdict: you can't out-recruit a lack of football sense. Scott Frost, the chosen one who lost his magic. Scott Frost was unprepared. He was a UCF hero who returned home to fix Nebraska and went 16-31 with 22 losses by 1 score. He was supposed to bring modern offense back to Lincoln. He was supposed to understand what Nebraska football meant. Instead, he delivered the most frustrating era in program history. Scott Frost was supposed to be the chosen one. Nebraska native, former quarterback, took UCF from nothing to undefeated. He understood the program, he understood the state, he understood what Nebraska football was supposed to look like. And for 5 years, Nebraska fans watched him turn their program into the most frustrating team in college football. Here's your receipt. 2021 Nebraska finishes 3-9 despite outgaining every Big Ten opponent except Ohio State. That's not unlucky. That's unprepared for modern football reality. But here's what made Frost so maddening to watch. His teams would dominate for 3 quarters and then find ways to lose. They'd move the ball up and down the field and then turn it over in the red zone. They'd get stops on defense and then give up the big play at the worst possible moment. 22 one-score losses. 22. That's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. That's a coach who couldn't figure out how to finish games. The UCF offense that looked so revolutionary, it looked outdated and mistake-prone in the Big Ten. The quarterback development that made him famous, he couldn't develop a single consistent quarterback at Nebraska. But if Frost's offense was so revolutionary at UCF, then why did it look outdated and mistake-prone at Nebraska? Why couldn't he develop a single consistent quarterback? Verdict: success at a lower level doesn't automatically translate when the stakes get higher. Ed Orgeron, from national champion to national headache. Ed Orgeron was chaotic. He coached arguably the greatest single season in college football history and then watched it all burn down in 2 years. He had 2019 LSU. Burrow, Chase, Jefferson, Brady. Perfection. Arguably the best team we've ever seen. 2 years later, chaos, scandals, and a 10-11 record. Let's be clear about something. The 2019 LSU team wasn't just good. It was historically great. Joe Burrow threw for over 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns. Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were unstoppable. The offense averaged over 48 points per game. That team was perfect, and Ed Orgeron was the head coach. 2 years later, LSU was a complete disaster, and Ed Orgeron was still the head coach. Here's your receipt. Orgeron was spotted at practices with dates and their kids while his team was getting blown out on Saturdays. That's not rebuilding. That's giving up. But here's what really happened to LSU after 2019. Orgeron thought he had figured it out. He thought he was the reason for the success. So when Joe Brady left for the NFL, he replaced him with his buddy. When other elite assistants got opportunities elsewhere, he replaced them with more buddies. The locker room culture that had been built over years, it imploded. Players stopped buying in. Recruiting fell off a cliff. The program that had just won a national championship became a national embarrassment. And through it all, Orgeron acted like everything was fine. Like this was just part of the process. Like losing to Missouri and getting blown out by Alabama was just bad luck. But if 2019 was so perfect, then how did it fall apart so fast? Simple. Orgeron replaced elite assistants with buddies, and the locker room imploded. Verdict: sometimes success doesn't change you. It reveals the chaos you were barely holding together. So what ties all these wasted opportunities together? Every single coach on this list had the setup to be legendary. Every single one had resources that 90% of college football would kill for. And every single one turned what if into what happened. Here's the brutal truth about college football. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. It recruits elsewhere. It transfers to programs that know what to do with it. These coaches had everything. Elite recruits, massive budgets, passionate fan bases, and they wasted it all because they couldn't get out of their own way. But here's what I want to know from you guys. Who's your biggest what could have been coach? Did I miss someone obvious? Should guys like Jimbo Fisher or Brian Kelly make the next list? Drop your takes in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button if you want more college football deep dives like this. And check out our next video where we're breaking down every college football dynasty that died too soon. Trust me, that one's gonna hurt even more than this one.